Something doesn't feel right, but you can't quite put your finger on it. You go to school, get a job, follow the rules, pay your taxes, and do your best to get by. It all feels normal. But what if it's not? What if the normal we live in is actually designed, carefully, deliberately, to keep us from asking dangerous questions? Not just about the world around us, but about who we are and what we're capable of. Think about it. Schools teach facts, but rarely how to question them. The media shows us what to focus on and what to ignore. Politics gives us choices that often don't change much at all. Religion, tradition, and culture lay out the rules before we even understand we're in a game. And yet, most of us never question any of it. Why? Because it's all built to seem natural, like traffic lights or smartphone updates. It's just the way things work. But behind those systems is something bigger: control. And here's where it gets really strange. Across nearly every ancient civilization, Egypt, Mesopotamia, South America, there are stories of beings from the sky who gave humans knowledge and guidance. These cultures, separated by oceans and thousands of years, built massive structures aligned with the stars, created complex calendars, and told eerily similar stories. Coincidence? Maybe. But if they all made it up separately, that's a lot of the same imagination happening in a lot of different places. Some believe these myths point to a shared origin or even outside influence, something or someone shaping human history from the start. That idea may sound extreme, but it raises a key concept. What if the reality we know isn't complete? Control doesn't always look like force. It looks like routine. It feels like normal. And that's what makes it so effective. If you never question it, you never see it. The first step to changing that? Awareness. Just starting to ask, why is this the way it is, can unravel decades of assumptions. That doesn't mean everything is fake, but it means some things might not be what they seem. And recognizing that possibility is where real freedom begins. This isn't about conspiracy or fantasy. It's about curiosity, about daring to ask what most people never do. Because once you start seeing the patterns, you can't unsee them. And that's when you begin to take your power back. But awareness alone isn't enough. Once you begin to question, the next step is understanding how the system maintains itself, how it keeps people not only from resisting, but from even noticing the need to. One of the most effective tools is fear. Not fear of violence necessarily, but fear of being wrong, fear of standing out, fear of losing your job, your reputation, or just the comfort of fitting in. That fear creates self-censorship. You don't need guards or surveillance when people are too afraid to ask questions on their own. Another tool is distraction. We live in an age of endless information, yet attention spans are shorter than ever. Social media, constant notifications, streaming content, it all keeps our minds busy but rarely focused. If you're always entertained, you're less likely to reflect. If you're overwhelmed, you're less likely to resist. Then there's division. The system thrives when people are split into opposing camps, by race, politics, class, belief. It keeps us fighting each other, instead of noticing how we're all affected by the same controls. If two people are busy arguing about who's right, they're unlikely to ask who wrote the rules in the first place. The illusion of choice is also critical. Being able to pick between two nearly identical products, politicians, or opinions creates a sense of freedom without real change. You feel like you're in control, when in reality the system just gave you a limited menu. The system doesn't need to control every person. It only needs to control the environment in which people form their beliefs. Schools, news, entertainment, even social norms, they shape our thinking from the outside in. By the time you're old enough to ask questions, the answers have already been decided for you. But the system has one weakness. It depends on your participation. Every time you question what you're told, seek out new perspectives, or refuse to accept just the way it is, you weaken its grip. The rules only work as long as people believe in them. Change starts not with revolution, but with recognition. With the simple but powerful act of noticing what you're told, what you're shown, and what's left out. And once you see the system clearly, you begin to realize the most dangerous thing you can do is think for yourself. Once you realize the system relies on your participation, the next logical step is to ask, why do we go along with it? The answer is simpler and more uncomfortable than most expect. Because it's easier. Going along means less friction. You get fewer questions. You stay out of trouble. Most people don't want to be outcasts. They don't want to be labeled difficult, weird, or paranoid. So they conform, not because they're convinced, but because it's safer. And that's by design. The system doesn't want you to rebel. It wants you to adapt, to adjust, to manage your discomfort without asking where it's coming from. Most people enforce the system without even realizing it. Parents pass down unquestioned beliefs. Teachers stick to the curriculum. Friends discourage each other from stepping out of line. Online, users report and shame others for thinking differently. No one is telling them to do this directly. They just believe it's what they're supposed to do. This is how control becomes culture. And the longer it goes on, the more self-sustaining it becomes. People stop needing evidence. They just want to fit in. Critical thinking becomes a risk. Asking tough questions becomes taboo. Comfort is often the biggest trap. You're not supposed to feel miserable, just numb, busy, distracted, tired, comfortable enough not to protest, but never fulfilled enough to truly live. That's not an accident. That's maintenance. But things are changing. More people are noticing patterns that don't make sense. Stories that don't add up. Technologies that seem helpful but quietly limit options. Economic systems that reward the few and burden the many. Education that prepares you for obedience, not independence. These aren't random flaws. They're features of a design built to keep people docile. So what now? You can opt out of parts of the system without leaving the world. It starts by choosing what you consume, who you listen to, and what you believe. It means practicing the skill of asking, who benefits if I believe this? Or, why am I only hearing this side? Small acts of awareness create cracks, and cracks let in light. This isn't about being radical. It's about being awake. And once enough people are awake, the system changes. Not because it wants to, but because it has to. So what does it actually look like to start stepping out of the system? It doesn't mean going off the grid or rejecting modern life. It means recognizing how much of your daily behavior is shaped by forces you didn't choose, and beginning to take that control back, piece by piece. Start with something simple, your attention. Your attention is a resource. Every ad, post, headline, and app fights for it. Why? Because what you focus on shapes what you think about. And what you think about shapes your beliefs, your actions, your identity. If they can direct your attention, they can direct your life. But most people never choose what to pay attention to. Their feeds decide. Their notifications decide. Their habits decide. Taking control of your attention is the first step to taking control of your mind. Next, question your assumptions. Not all of them, just one to start. Ask yourself, what do I believe that I've never really questioned? It could be about work, money, education, relationships, success, even what a good life is supposed to look like. Then ask, who told me that? And why did I believe them? You'll start to see how much of your worldview was given to you, not chosen by you. Another step is to notice your dependencies. Do you rely on a system that can be taken away at any time? Your income, your access to information, your ability to speak freely online? What happens if that system turns against you or changes the rules? These aren't paranoid questions. They're practical. Being dependent on systems you don't control makes you easier to manage. That's the point. The more independent you become, financially, intellectually, emotionally, the less influence the system has over you. Most people don't actually agree with the system. They just assume everyone else does. It's called pluralistic ignorance. Everyone's thinking the same doubts, but no one says anything, because they think they're alone. That silence protects the status quo. But when one person speaks up, it gives others permission to do the same. And that's where real change begins. Not with everyone flipping a switch overnight, but with individuals refusing to go along silently. You don't need to be loud. You just need to be honest, with yourself first, and then with others. Because when you live in a world built on illusions, clarity is a revolutionary act. One of the most powerful forms of control today is one that's almost invisible, the control of identity. Think about how much of who you believe you are has been defined by outside inputs. Your nationality, your job title, your social status, even your personality type. These labels feel personal, but most of them are adopted through repetition, approval, or fear of rejection. You're expected to know who you are, but within a very narrow range. The moment you step outside those boundaries, change your views, leave a career, stop identifying with a group, you're seen as unstable or lost. But maybe that discomfort isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. Maybe it's a sign you're finally thinking for yourself. Your identity is the easiest way to control your behavior. If someone can define who you are, they can predict what you'll do. For example, if you identify as a patriot, certain ideas will feel off limits, even if they're true. If you see yourself as a professional, you'll avoid anything that might make you look too unconventional. And if you've been told you're just average, you'll stop reaching higher, without anyone needing to stop you. The more fixed your identity, the more predictable you become. That's exactly what the system wants. Another piece of the puzzle: data. Today, your digital profile knows you better than most people in your life. Every click, swipe, pause, and purchase is tracked and turned into predictions, not just of what you might do, but of what you might believe. This isn't just about advertising. It's about shaping your path in advance. What you see, what you hear, what's recommended to you, all tailored to keep you inside a behavioral loop. If you start to drift, the system adjusts the inputs to pull you back. And here's where it gets tricky. You feel like you're choosing, but the options were already filtered before they reached you. That's the illusion of agency, having just enough freedom to feel in control, while the deeper structure stays intact. But you can break the loop. The first step is recognizing how often you're reacting instead of deciding. For example, do you scroll out of boredom or because you meant to? Do you believe something because it's true or because it's popular? Do you speak your mind or filter yourself to stay safe? These questions aren't always comfortable, but they're necessary, because every time you choose awareness over autopilot, you disrupt the system's hold. Freedom isn't something you're given, it's something you have to claim, not once, but over and over, in how you think, in what you believe, in what you choose to question. No one can do that part for you. Once you recognize the system and how it works, the natural question becomes, so what can I actually do about it? The truth is, you don't need to dismantle the entire system yourself. That's not realistic, and it's not the point. The goal is to stop letting it control you, and then help others see they have the same choice. Start with a mindset shift. You don't need permission to think differently. Most people wait for someone else to confirm their doubts before they act. But if you're waiting for the system to validate your suspicions, you'll be waiting forever. The structure is designed to reward conformity, not questioning. So stop waiting. Begin by reclaiming your time and attention. Audit your habits. Who are you listening to every day? What kind of information are you consuming? Is it making you more aware or more numb? Replace passive input with active learning, not to find the one truth, but to build the muscle of thinking independently. Read from outside your bubble. Learn history that wasn't taught in school. Listen to people who challenge your worldview without attacking it. Next, reduce dependency. This doesn't mean you have to reject society. It means you should diversify your support systems. Can you learn skills that make you less reliant on centralized institutions? Can you build local networks instead of relying on faceless systems? Even basic things, like learning to grow food, manage your own data, or generate income independently, create space between you and the system. That space gives you leverage. Also, connect with others who see what you see. You're not the only one asking questions. But isolation is part of the trap, making you feel alone so you give up and go back to sleep. Find people who are willing to question openly, without fear or superiority. Talk, listen, collaborate, not to build an echo chamber, but to build resilience. And perhaps most importantly, learn to live with uncertainty. Control systems thrive because people crave certainty. They want fixed answers, solid labels, and clean narratives. The system delivers that, at the cost of truth. But the truth is often messy, complex, unfinished. Learning to sit with that discomfort is a skill. It allows you to stay awake without panic, and to think clearly even when the answers aren't obvious. That's how you stay grounded, by learning to observe, think, and act without needing constant reassurance. Waking up isn't just about seeing what's wrong. It's about seeing what's still possible. Once you stop believing the lie that things have to be this way, you open space for something new, not just personally, but collectively. Awareness is the beginning, but it can't stop there. Once you see how control operates through routine, distraction, fear, and illusion, the next challenge is learning how to live beyond it without burning out or giving up. You don't win by fighting the system directly. You win by becoming ungovernable by it. That doesn't mean chaos. It means stability that the system can't shake. It means building a life that isn't easily manipulated, redirected, or silenced. So what does that look like? It looks like earning a living without depending on a single employer or fragile industry. It looks like having skills, real, usable ones, that can't be deplatformed. It looks like protecting your privacy, owning your data, and knowing how to navigate both online and offline without handing over everything you are. It looks like knowing how to disagree without fear, how to think without being told what to think, how to connect with others without performing. It also means accepting that the system won't collapse overnight, and it doesn't need to for your life to change. You don't need the world to wake up before you take action. Every time one person refuses to follow blindly, refuses to be baited into division, refuses to outsource their critical thinking, that's one less cog in the machine. That matters, because the system doesn't scale well without blind cooperation. So live a life that doesn't feed it. Not with rage, but with clarity. Not with paranoia, but with preparation. Not by withdrawing, but by building better systems. Ones based on mutual respect, voluntary association, and truth, even when it's inconvenient. There's no perfect blueprint, but there is one universal truth. You're not powerless. You've just been taught to act like you are. The most radical thing you can do is not to fight harder. It's to think clearly, live freely, and help others do the same. That's how control ends. Quietly, locally, personally, one mind at a time, starting with yours.